So up YouTube, how are you all doing? How's the Vikings doing? We raiding, we're still fighting. Welcome to a new episode. Today I will be drawing an actual Viking, so I'm very excited. It's going to be awesome. Actually drawing a Viking on Viking and Draw. Who would have thunk it? So I'm going to take you guys a little bit through the process of what I do, the character development, and how I create the character from A to B to the best of my ability. I hope you all enjoyed it. I had an amazing time doing it. And I would like to leave you all with a Viking joke of the day. What is the Vikings' favorite console? Well, that will be an Xbox. Hope you all enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I would go on to the lines, and I would get my reference images that I want to use, or reference images that I like about general Vikings. I would start off with a very rough drawing of my actual Viking, just getting the shapes down, just getting proportion down, just getting an idea of where I want to go with this with my Viking. I use primarily the Nordic character that you can create from Skyrim online. I generally use that character, but I did like the build and the lighting on Bjorn's reference images. So I started off with only two. Well, I had downloaded quite a few reference images, but I only started off with two. I don't like to start with too much reference images. As I feel, okay, cool, I'm heading towards an area where I need to get more ideas or get more references, then I would pull in more reference images that I downloaded, and then I would start working from that, adding what I feel I like about the one and adding it to my character. Because at the end of the day, I want to use it as a reference. I want to still be able to create my own character, but I just want everything to be grounded in reality. So once I've done my entire outline sketch, I like to do it very rough, just to get the general idea of where I want to go with my character. I also use this part of my drawing to make sure that I have my perspective in order. The size of my character's head compared to his body, the size of the axe compared to his arm compared to his body, just making sure that everything is in proportion, it's correct, or at least makes sense. It doesn't always have to be 100% correct, but you'll definitely see as you grow, you'll see if something bothers you, it's usually something to do with perspective. It's not, doesn't look right, it looks off. So once I've completed my outline sketch, I will now move on to a more refined sketch of my character. Adding in a bit more detail where I felt I was missing some details. I usually like to start with a very, very basic sketch, very rough, and then in this, when I start doing my actual line art, I like to add more detail. I like to go into things that I feel was missing on the rough sketch. I like to add in this part of my drawing. I just generally feel that if I start with too much detail, I tend to lose myself, and then I don't focus on the things that are important, like perspective, like proportions of the character. So if I start with too much detail, I tend to lose the entire structure of the drawing, and then the drawing itself doesn't look good anymore. It will look okay, but I will always feel like there's something missing. There's something that's just not right with the drawing. So I would like to start with minimal details, and then work my way in phases. Work to the next phase where I add a bit more detail. Work to the next phase where I add a bit more detail. Now when I'm happy with my entire outline sketch, I feel like I've added enough what I need to add. I'm still gonna add detail. I like to work with grayscale. Now light colors tend to pull a bit more forwards, and your dark colors tends to go a bit pull your eye backwards. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm just laying down general base flat colors, as they would say, just getting an idea of what skin, what is actual texture, or what is actual hair or armor, or what is in front and what is in the back. I'm just trying to break down my entire character using only grayscale. I like to use grayscale because especially if you need to start adding color, if you have a basic understanding of grayscale and the tonal values of grayscale, adding color helps a lot for myself personally. Helps a lot to refine it a bit more. So as I'm adding colors, I'm asking myself, yes, what is this texture going to be like? Is it going to be at the front of the character? Is it going to be at the back of the character? If it's at the front of the character, tends to be a bit lighter. If it's at the back of the character, it tends to be a bit darker. However, if you can see the wolf's pelt, it's one color because it's still one object, and it's still going to be a dark wolf's pelt. So as you can see now, I'm starting to add a bit more detail. I'm starting to work layer by layer, just adding as I go. I try to I usually generally keep everything separate, but there is a point, it's usually now, when I start to combine everything, my background sketches and my layer sketches. So now I'm just looking for more reference because I feel like I need to add a little bit more detail, something cool onto the helmet. So now I'm going to add it onto the helmet. Now I feel like, okay, cool, it's just something I want to add onto the helmet. So now that I've added everything together, I've combined all my layers, it is a lot more destructive, but for me it's also a lot more free. I can actually express a lot of what I want to do, because I can now take away easily, I can bring back, I can add, I can remove, I can play with the line's thickness, I can break the line so I don't have a definite black line. So this, I like to do this, especially if I'm doing a very loose drawing. I like to try to stay away from too much hard lines. However, I do like the hard lines in the beginning because they do give me a lot of structure. So now I'm moving on towards the arm, and I'm just adding detail, going back to references again, checking a cool Viking runes that I like, just to actually ground this character as a Viking. Because yes, he has a beard and he has a cool helmet, which actually, according to historical accuracy, is not correct with the horns, but that is how Vikings are depicted, and I like it. It's cool. I like the horns. So now I've added a bit more essence to the Viking, more of the warrior-like feel to this character. Because at the end of the day, you want your character to look cool as well, and it needs to look cool. It's a drawing. It needs to be fun. It needs to look cool. It needs someone looks at it and be like, oh yeah, that's a Viking, man. He's got like Viking tats. He's got scars. Oh man, that he even slain a wolf. So you always need to ask yourself, what do I want to achieve with this drawing? Do I just want people to look at the drawing and be like, oh, that's interesting? Or do I want people to look at the drawing and think, yeah, that's a cool Viking that I can see in a world of Norse mythology? So it's also always important. So now when I start to add the light, you can see it pops a lot of the drawing out a bit more. So that is very important to understand light and dark, because and how to use it in contrasting ideas, or how to use it to actually enrich your drawing. Because now I've decided I like the ink or the tattoos, and I'm now gonna just make it more refined. And now I'm gonna add a bit more light here and there, just to give it a bit more three-dimensionality, just to give it a bit more life. I also decided to add another scar and another tattoo on the chest, just for a little bit of flair. But you can see, as you add more structure to it, it starts to build towards something cool. And that is what I love about the process of drawing. You start off with an idea, you start off with a concept, and as you start to draw, you just get immersed into this drawing, and you just have so much fun that after a while you're just like, oh, this is gonna work, yes, this is not gonna work. And it's a constant process of going back and forth, changing, adding, taking away, and not to be afraid of doing that, because at the end of the day you need to grow as well. And the only way you're gonna grow is if you try new stuff. If you actually try to improve yourself by just going crazy sometimes. So now I felt, okay, cool, I needed a bit more reference, just to get an idea of what I was going for the background as well. Because what I like to do is, I like to sometimes take a break from the character itself, because I feel like I've gotten a bit lost in the character and I don't know what to do. So now I'm just going to add a background just to make it a bit more interesting. So I just started off with a basic. I was thinking of making clouds or cloud-like background, and then I decided to go for mountains because it's in the mountain ranges, snowy mountains. I generally just started off with normal mountains, just trying to get a very basic layout and a very basic concept of mountains, snowy mountains in the background, just to break the character apart a bit from just being on a plain white canvas. You can do that as well. I do that a lot of the times where now I'm just going to look at some reference, because I actually thought, oh, okay, cool, I know how to draw mountains, and then I started drawing mountains and I'm like, I don't know how to draw mountains. So then I went and got some reference, and I'm like, okay, cool, now I know a bit more of how to draw mountains. And now I'm drawing mountains. Now going back to reference, because it's always important to go back to reference, because the idea that we have in our minds of how something looks and what it actually looks like in reality is not always the same. You need to build up reference in your mind to actually get to a point where you can draw something realistically. But it's always best to just work with your reference. So now I looked at my reference and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm lacking a few elements in my references. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to get new reference images that I think I'm going to use, that's a bit more refined, a bit more detailed, and a bit more towards the look I'm going to go for my Viking warrior. I then saw this image with the Viking and this spirit bear at the background, and I decided, well, I already have a wolf on the shoulder, maybe I should get like a cool wolf in the background. So now I'm looking for reference images for that, and then I got a few cool images. Got a few dark images as well that I thought, actually, hey, it's gonna work. So now that I've got my new references, now I'm going back to my character. Now I'm refining my character even more, and now I'm gonna go a bit crazier with my tonal values. I'm gonna be a bit of a bold Viking at the moment. So I'm adding in more dark, and I'm adding in a next layer of tonal value into my character itself. And as I was doing this, now I'm adding light again, but as I was doing this, I came across this idea where I used this dark lines and this loose hatching way, and I decided, well, that looks like a comic book esque vibe, and I loved it. So I started adding that as well into my drawing. And every time I go back and go forth, I add light, I add dark, I add a bit more of a tonal value, a bit more of a grayish value. So now you see, I'll constantly work back and forth until I feel okay, cool. I'm happy with this. Now I can move on to the next part, or I feel I'm lacking a bit more, so now I need to go back. So the wolf, I did the same principle. I also started with a very rough basics outline sketch. I then put on my tonal values of my wolf, and then I started actually working on my wolf. Once again, working in stages, working in layers. Starting off with a basic sketch, refining that sketch, and then going to color values. Then combining everything together, and then working with more tonal values, more color values. Trying to add a bit more dimension and a bit more life to your character, because I don't want my characters to look flat. I want them to have volume. I want them to be look like they're actually an actual character in a world somewhere, in a fantasy world, and that is what I strive to do with my characters. And I constantly okay, so now I'm just going through a few effects because it needs to be like an ethereal ghost effect type vibe, and I kind of decided to go with a color as well. So I went with this bluish color, but I decided it was a bit too much. So this is the cool thing about working in grayscale. It's easy to change colors. So for me to edit colors is a lot easier. I just edit the wolf layer that's in the background that still has the grayscale, to change a bit of the colors of the wolf itself. So it gives you a lot more range to work with, and so I challenged myself to do this drawing with only one brush, and I decided to use my brush in creative ways, change the opacity, change the flow, and just have a good time with the brush. But I also limited myself to 3 hours. I wanted to complete this drawing, or I wanted to complete a drawing in 3 hours to the best of my ability. So I had a lot of fun with this drawing. It was so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is what I came up with at the end of the day. I decided to just blur out the background a bit because I felt like it was a bit too overwhelming, too much on the page. So this is my drawing. This is my Viking. I hope you all enjoyed it. I really had a blast doing this. It was so much fun doing this drawing. It was a very expressive drawing, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Be good. That was my Viking. I hope you all enjoyed the drawing episode of an actual Viking. And I'm definitely going to do a lot more of these drawings. I'm probably going to do a lot of studies as well, doing lighting studies and figure studies, because I do know that I need to work on that personally as well. And in terms of rendering, I'm also going to work on that. But there was me drawing a Viking. I had a lot of fun. It was so enjoyable. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. See you all on the next episode. Skål.